She was the only one who gave Henry VIII what he wanted most. He wanted a son. And yet, 12 days after that triumph, she was dead. Her name was Jane Seymour, the beloved queen, gentle, obedient, and tragically short-lived. But behind the royal mourning lay a darker story of power, desperation, and perhaps a deadly choice. The year was 1536. The Tower of London echoed with the final cries of Anne Boleyn, Henry's dazzling second wife, executed after falling from favor. Only days later, Henry turned his eyes to another woman, quieter, softer, and, as many said, far more obedient. Jane Seymour was no seductress. Born into a noble but modest family, she served as lady-in-waiting first to Queen Catherine of Aragon, then to Anne Boleyn. She had learned what pleased Henry and what destroyed him. Jane was everything and was not, demure where and had been bold, submissive where and had defied. And perhaps that was exactly what Henry wanted. Barely 2 weeks after Anne Boleyn's execution, Henry and Jane were married. England had a new queen, and the court whispered that she would succeed where the others had failed, to give the king a son. Jane knew the stakes. Henry had torn England away from the Catholic Church for this dream of a male heir. If she succeeded, she would secure her family's fortune. If she failed, well, the ghosts of Catherine and Anne were warning enough. By early 1537, Jane was pregnant. Henry was overjoyed. At last, after 2 failed marriages and years of turmoil, his dynasty would continue. Jane's pregnancy was treated as a national triumph. The bells of London rang. Prayers were said daily for her health, but court observers noted that Jane's health during pregnancy seemed fragile. On October 12, 1537, after 2 days of exhausting labor, the cries of a newborn echoed through Hampton Court. It was a boy, Prince Edward, the long-awaited heir. Henry was beside himself with joy. He named the child Edward, after his own mother, a symbol of divine reward. He called Jane his phoenix, risen from the ashes of his broken past. But as the kingdom celebrated, Jane was slipping into the shadows of death. Centuries later, a chilling rumor began to spread that during Jane's difficult labor, the royal physicians gave Henry a choice: save the mother or save the child. And Henry, desperate for a son, chose the child. There are no official records to prove the conversation took place, but we know Jane's labor was prolonged, perhaps obstructed, and in the 16th century, such cases often ended with a decision: perform a risky operation that might save the mother but lose the baby, or protect the child and let nature take its deadly course. When Henry was told, "Your Majesty, her strength wanes. The child may not survive without intervention," he replied,
"Then God's will be done, but England must have its heir."
Whether that exchange was real or imagined, one truth remained: Jane's body endured 2 days of unimaginable suffering. She delivered Edward alive, but in saving the future king, she may have sealed her own fate. At first, Jane appeared to recover. She was seen sitting up in bed, speaking softly to Henry, even holding her newborn. But a few days later, fever struck. Her temperature soared. Her skin turned pale and clammy. The midwives whispered of childbed fever, a mysterious sickness that claimed many mothers. We now know it was puerperal infection, caused by bacteria entering the womb during childbirth. In an age before hygiene or antibiotics, it was a slow death sentence. When it was already late, Henry said,
"Save her. She gave me a son. She must live."
But no prayer, no physician, and no royal command could stop the infection spreading through her blood. On the night of October 23, 1537, Jane's condition worsened. By dawn, she was delirious. By the afternoon of October 24th, the bells tolled for the queen. She had been England's queen for only 17 months. She died just 12 days after giving Henry his son. Henry was shattered, or so he wanted the world to believe. He wore black for months, spoke of her as his true wife, and ordered she be buried with honors worthy of a queen consort. But court gossip whispered that the king's grief was less for the woman, and more for the loss of his victory symbol. Jane Seymour's funeral was the grandest of Henry's wives. She was buried at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle, the very place where Henry himself would one day rest. He built a magnificent tomb, though it was never completed, where he and Jane lie side by side to this day. For Henry, Jane remained the one who gave him a son. He never spoke ill of her. He never replaced her in his memory. But within months, he was back to negotiating his next marriage for the sake of politics, and perhaps the same restless heart that had led 3 queens before her to ruin. Jane Seymour's death became a symbol, the quiet price of a king's obsession. Her story reminds us that in the Tudor world, women were pawns in the game of power and lineage. She died fulfilling her duty, as Henry and his court saw it. But her death also gave rise to the myth of the perfect wife, silent, obedient, and dead. 400 years later, historians still debate Henry's true feelings. Did he love Jane? Or did he simply love what she gave him, the son who would carry his name? Perhaps the truth lies buried with her, beneath the cold stones of Windsor. Jane Seymour, the queen who won the king's heart, and lost her life bringing England its heir. If you enjoyed this story of love, power, and tragedy in Tudor England, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more forgotten royal tales.